Hello, and welcome to the Growing Our Family podcast, Pregnancy Edition, where we'll discuss topics ranging from your very first positive test all the way through delivery. I'm your host, Brittany, and I'm a new mom to a beautiful baby boy. Throughout my pregnancy, I did hours of research on everything that came my way. Join me on a weekly chat where I'll share my knowledge and personal experiences with all of you. You were listening to episode 8, Selecting a Pediatrician. Many first-time moms may not realize that you have to select a pediatrician before the baby is born. Some hospitals will assign one after birth, but most parents need to have one lined up in advance. This guide will help you determine when to start looking and how to make a selection. So you might be asking yourself, why a pediatrician? Pediatricians are doctors that go through the same 4 years of medical school and then continue on to 3 more years of training. They specialize in children from birth to 18 years old. A pediatrician has to become board certified and follows regulations set by the American Board of Pediatrics. Many people debate whether or not to go with a pediatrician or just their family doctor. The choice is 100% up to you, but there are factors to take into consideration when making that decision. A pediatrician focuses solely on children, whereas a family doctor practices on people of all ages. This means that a pediatrician will most likely be more comfortable and more experienced when it comes to working with young children or babies, especially. Studies have shown that less than 20% of patients seen by a family doctor are children. Some even say the percentage is closer to 10%. It really comes down to your specific provider and how comfortable you are with them. Remember, it's not a permanent decision. You can always go with a pediatrician for the first few years and then switch to a family doctor if you feel more comfortable with that down the road. So when should you start looking? It's better to actually start looking for a pediatrician while you're still pregnant. You will have so much going on after baby is born, and the last thing you're going to want to do is have to research and meet with multiple different doctors and make your decision. The best time to start looking is during the second trimester. This allows you enough time to sift through the options, schedule meetings, and make your selection all before your new baby arrives. How to find your pediatrician. You want to start by asking friends, family, your OBGYN or midwife, or even your coworkers who they prefer so you can get a list started. You want at least 3 to 5 names, if not more, before you start doing your own research. Everybody will have their own preferences and personalities. Just because your friend loves their pediatrician doesn't mean that they'll mesh well with your personality, views, or even just your family or children. Next, you're going to want to narrow down your list by checking with your insurance and seeing which doctors are in network. Log into your insurance portal and there will typically be a Find a Provider section. If not, you can always call the number on your card and ask about specific doctors. Cross off any pediatricians that are out of network. You don't want to start doing a bunch of research on pediatricians and fall in love with one that you think is perfect just to find out that they're not in network, so it's best to do this step right at the beginning. Once you've narrowed down your list, start doing your own research. Check their ratings on WebMD, HealthGrades, Yelp, Google, or really any other website that has reviews on it. Look at the overall rating for the doctor, the front staff, and the office as a whole. It doesn't matter how great your pediatrician is, if you have rude office staff or it's hard to get in for an appointment, your overall experience is going to be negative. By now, your list should have 1 to 2 people on it, or 3 if you really can't come to a decision. Now is the time to start calling and setting up a meet and greet. This is where you get to tour the office, ask questions, and talk to your pediatrician to see if they are the right fit for you. You'll want to get a feel for their preferences on some of the more controversial topics, such as vaccinations, circumcision, sleep training, stuff like that, just to make sure that their views align with yours. If they don't, then it's going to be really hard to get the correct support and make decisions if you guys have differing opinions. So it's always best to make sure that you guys see eye to eye on some of the more important topics. When you're trying to select your pediatrician, you can ask your friends that go to that same person a few questions to get a better idea of the experience. So, one, do your kids like them? So this is really important. Not only do you want your pediatrician to be smart and well liked in the community by the parents, but it's also important that your kids like and trust them and don't dread going to see them every visit. Number 2, is it hard to make appointments or get specific days or times? So if your pediatrician only works Mondays and Tuesdays and you have to work 12-hour shifts on those days, it's probably not going to work. Even if the pediatrician is great and you love their personality, if you can never get in to see them, then it's not the right fit. Number 3 is how quickly can they get you in for sick visits or emergencies? My pediatrician's office got me in the same exact day within like an hour of me calling them and telling them that my kid just had an ongoing cold and his nose was runny. He had been sick for like 4 weeks straight, and they said anything over like 2 or 3 weeks, they definitely want to see him. They were able to get me an appointment later that day to just come in and check with the pediatrician to make sure everything was okay and it hadn't turned into anything more serious, which I really appreciated. So just check to see how long it takes to get in those sick visits. You don't want to call and say, my kid's throwing up and they can't see you till the next day. Number 4, do they explain things well and keep you involved in decisions? This is extremely important for me because I like to know what's going on and I like to have all the information, even if I don't necessarily understand it all. But I definitely like to be in the loop when making decisions about my child. Number 5, how long do you have to sit in the waiting room? This is a huge one. Nobody likes to sit in the waiting room for 3 or 4 hours before their appointment. You're going to want to look for a pediatrician's office that is closer to like 10 to 15 minutes, especially once you start having to drag kids along with you. They are not nearly as patient. And if you have a baby and you're breastfeeding on a schedule, you really don't want to be sitting in that waiting room for too long. Number 6, do you like the office staff? I covered this a little bit earlier, but office staff makes all the difference. If they're rude or it's hard to schedule appointments or just call and like ask questions, that's a really big factor in what you're going to be comfortable with for the long term. And number 7 is parking convenient. You want to make sure that wherever the office is, that you're able to park in a garage or there's a parking lot and you're not required to like park on the street. Especially with a new baby, you're not going to want to have to walk multiple blocks to get to your appointment. So the next set of questions is what you should actually ask your pediatrician on your meet and greet. So some of these answers you might be able to find on their website. So just take a look and that'll save both of you some time before the appointment. Sometimes the meet and greet appointments are only about 10 minutes, so you just want to make sure to ask the questions that are most important to you first. You don't want to save like your most important question for last, just in case they run out of time. So number 1, do you have a specialty? And this doesn't really matter to most parents. Some parents like to find a pediatrician that specializes in, some sort of child care, if they're specialized in neurology or who knows what. But that's just a question that you can ask, and it also shows if they have more schooling than the standard pediatrician does. Number 2, do you have separate waiting areas for sick and healthy children? This was extremely important to me when I was going to the office with a newborn. He was completely exposed and has no immune system yet, and I really wanted to make sure that some 10-year-old that has the flu wasn't going to be sitting right next to my newborn baby in the pediatrician's office. Number 3, what are your hours and do you offer evenings or weekends? Sometimes if you or your husband or someone else who's taking care of the baby, if you have really strict work schedules and you have to work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, it might be really hard to get into these appointments. So if this is the case for you, you might want to look into a pediatrician's office that might offer either early morning appointments or after 5 o'clock appointments, or some even offer appointments on Saturdays. For me, my work schedule is pretty flexible, and so I'm able to take my son in. But if it were just up to my husband, he would definitely had to have picked a different pediatrician's office, because he would not have been able to go to all of these appointments that you have in the first year. Number 4, do you offer same-day sick appointments? I also covered this a little bit earlier, but this is just a really important one. You want to make sure that if your kid isn't feeling well, that they get you in ASAP, just to make sure that there's nothing else going on. Number 5, what is your policy on vaccination? So just make sure this aligns with your views. This is a highly controversial topic. So I just want to make sure that if you're anti-vaccination, that you find a pediatrician's office that'll accept you, because a lot of them nowadays won't even accept patients that don't plan on vaccinating. So if that's something that you're interested in, just make sure that you ask that right up front, because now they're really cracking down on children being vaccinated, at least around where I live. Number 6, what if my baby gets sick when the office is closed? So just find out what their procedure is. If you have a late night call, if you just have to go to an urgent care or the emergency room, or if they have someone on call that you can give them a call after hours, and just find out what the procedure is. You don't want to wait until it's 2 o'clock in the morning and your baby's really sick with a high fever and you have no idea what to do. So this is just a great question to ask, so that way you know the procedure before it ever gets to that. Do you have an after-hours clinic or phone number? So for my specific pediatrician's office, all of the pediatricians take on-call shifts at a local clinic, and if your baby is sick after hours, you can take them to this urgent care, and there's always someone there that works at the practice that we go to. They also have an after-hours phone number that calls to a nurse practitioner, and she's able to answer questions or give your pediatrician a call on his cell phone if it's something that she doesn't know how to answer or is just better for your specific provider. Number 8, is this a solo or a group practice? If it's solo, you're going to want to find out who covers them when they're gone. And if it's a group practice, you should ask how often you'll see your specific pediatrician versus other doctors. At my specific practice, we only see my pediatrician. We had one other pediatrician see my son, and that was the day after he was born, because our pediatrician wasn't working that day, and it just happened to be the day that he was born on. But every other appointment since then, we specifically schedule with only our pediatrician. We don't see anyone else, and they don't really want you seeing anyone else. But I do know other practices will have you rotate through pediatricians, and just so your child gets to know other people in the practice and you're not pigeonholed to only the specific days that your doctor is working. Number 9, will you come to the hospital after birth? And this is a great question to ask. Some people will come to your hospital and check on the baby, and others don't check on your baby until the wellness check after you leave the hospital. And then they'll have on-staff pediatricians and doctors do the check right after your baby's born in the hospital. So it's just a good idea of finding out what their policy is and what they typically do, just because you don't want to be wondering if your pediatrician's going to show up while you're sitting in the hospital with your newborn. Number 10, what is your schedule for wellness checks? A common schedule is the first one right after they're born, either in the hospital or 3 to 5 days old in the office. And then we had another one at 2 weeks, a wellness check at 1 month, 2 months, 4 months, and then it's 6 months, 9 months, and then 12 months old. And then after that, it kind of varies depending, but you just want to check to see what the schedule is. You want to make sure that they're checking up on your baby and you're getting enough well-child visits in, but you also don't want to have one every 2 weeks for the first year of their life because that would get pretty old. Will you be able to help and give advice with general development? And for this, I'm talking about things like sleep training or discipline. If you have questions about bottle feeding or breastfeeding, can they help you out with that? Just really any questions you have about parenting in general, you want to make sure that your pediatrician is open to giving you advice and helping you out with things, because the internet is full of differing advice on most of these topics, and you just want someone who knows you specifically and your baby, how they're developing, to give you recommendations that are specific to you. Number 12, do you work with any lactation consultants or do you have any recommendations? So I know my lactation consultant doesn't work specifically with any pediatrician's offices, but she knows most of them in town, and a lot of them know her and will recommend her to people. I know other lactation consultants that actually work in the office and can give you specific breastfeeding advice like during your visits, and they work there at the same clinic and they can see you specifically like before your appointment or anything like that. And that is also extremely convenient if that's something you prefer. And the last question, what hospitals do you work with? You want to make sure that your pediatrician works at the hospital that your insurance covers. My insurance only covers one out of the 2 main hospitals in town. And so that was a really important question for us. We wanted to make sure that he was able to go and check on my baby afterwards. And, if anything happened later on down the road, we have to take him to the one hospital. We want the pediatrician to be able to work with him as well. So that's it for the questions. Just my advice is just to start looking earlier rather than later, because when you get towards the end of your pregnancy, there is so much that you end up having to do. And this is something that's just really easy to get done and checked off your list early on in the pregnancy. So I would wait until after you know if it's a boy or a girl, if you're finding that out, just because that'll bring up other questions. If it's a boy, you'll want to make sure you're on the same page with whether or not you are circumcising and stuff like that. Just questions that are specific to your family and your preferences. And I would also suggest looking at what is coming up. My baby was born in January and we waited a little longer, and we had a really hard time meeting with pediatricians because the dates that we were looking at fell right around like Thanksgiving, and then we were going into like Christmas, and a lot of people were on vacation. So if you have any holidays coming up, try to schedule your appointments in advance so that way you aren't competing with vacations or holidays or anything like that. Is just one little piece of advice from me to you. So that's it for selecting a pediatrician. If you have any questions on that, feel free to leave a comment on the blog section of this on my website, or feel free to shoot me an email anytime with any questions you might have. I love hearing from listeners. This week I am reviewing one of my favorite items that I keep in my diaper bag, and that's the USOF nursing and car seat cover. This product is probably one of the most versatile products I own. It's a lightweight cover that you can use on your baby's infancy, stroller, high chair, or you can use it as a light blanket, a scarf, or even a breastfeeding cover. Is there anything it doesn't do? I didn't realize how many different applications this item had when I originally added it to my baby registry. It was recommended to me by another mom, and I am so glad I purchased it. This item has a permanent spot in my diaper bag, and I literally bring it everywhere I go. So for the seat or stroller cover, this is really perfect for protecting your baby from the elements. It's breathable cover to protect from the sun, the wind, rain, or even the snow. There's a large opening at the bottom and a smaller opening on the top. You can thread it over your child's infancy and place a small opening right up at the top by the handle. And this allows you to hold the handle, and it gives you an access point to look in and check on your baby without letting all the light in or any of the rain or whatever the weather is like outside. The cover is also a great barrier to keep everything inside. During cold winters, your child will like to kick off their blankets while you're out and about. This cover will not only keep the wind and rain or snow off your baby, but it will keep all those blankets and accessories inside the car seat. It'll prevent them from dropping any toys or pacifiers outside of the seat and onto the ground. This cover is an amazing way to prevent strangers from getting too close to baby when you're out and about. For some reason, complete strangers are going to want to touch your child, which I don't understand, but it's gross. You don't know where their hands have been. And this just creates a protective boundary around your baby while they're in the car seat or stroller. And hopefully it'll keep those grubby hands away. If worse comes to worse, it's not see-through or anything. So if someone goes, oh, is that your baby in there? You can be like, yeah, sorry, he's sleeping. And they can't tell, they can't see him. And then you just walk away and leave them standing there. For your high chair, this is the perfect cover for any high chair, whether that's the one in your home or if you're out and about and trying to eat like at a restaurant. Your home high chair, it just keeps it semi-clean during feedings, especially if you're feeding them something really messy. Lately, we tried introducing watermelon to our son, and oh my gosh, he was covered. He was covered in watermelon, and it's red, and I was like, oh, this was bad. We totally should have used this to cover up the high chair. If you're out at a restaurant, this really helps protect and create a germ barrier because those restaurant high chairs are so disgusting. You can slide the large opening over the chair and then place your baby through the small opening. This prevents baby from touching the chair with his or her hand or even trying to chew on the restaurant's like gross wood or plastic or whatever it is. My son loves to like lean over and try to gnaw on it, and we put a stop to that real fast. You can also use a shopping cart cover, but these just take up more room and it's easier to forget when you're on the go. This is what I use when we're planning a visit. If we have a reservation at a restaurant, I'll bring in the shopping cart cover just because it works slightly better, but the nursing cover works so great for just having on you at all times. So there's been times that we'll just stop in for lunch and we're not really planning on going anywhere. Or if we're out and about, like at the mall, and we'll just stop at, a restaurant nearby and I don't have the car seat cover, this is just a really great alternative to that. So for breastfeeding, this is probably my most used application for this product. I much prefer this cover over the typical scarf cover or like a standard swaddle blanket. This cover goes over both of your shoulders at the same time, so it keeps you completely covered while breastfeeding. As baby gets older, they will try to pull or kick the nursing covers off while you're feeding. This can get a little uncomfortable, especially when you're feeding in crowded areas. This cover goes on over your shoulders and covers the baby completely. This means it's so much harder to pull the cover up, exposing you to the entire world. The fabric is similar to like a dry fit material, so it's super breathable and extremely lightweight. The top opening is stretchy enough that you can easily pull it open to take a peek at the baby while nursing. When you're trying to latch the baby at the beginning, I just kind of pull it up onto like my forehead, so my head is inside the cover and we're both like under this little like teepee. And once I get baby properly latched, I just pull it back down and my face is out and the baby's under and it's all good. So overall, I think this is really great and versatile product. My only wish is that they had a warmer version to use during the wintertime. However, this is nothing that a few layers of blankets can't fix. This is a staple in the diaper bag and is one of the best items I received during my baby shower. Since having my son, I've seen so many other moms using the same product, and we all agree that they are amazing. So that's it this week for the Growing Our Family Pregnancy Podcast. I just want to thank all of you for joining in again, and make sure to visit our website, growingourfamily.com. That's growingourfamily.com to see today's show notes and product links. Also, don't forget to rate and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you download your podcasts so you always get the latest episodes. If you love the show, the easiest way to support us is to actually click on any of the Amazon links I have in the show notes or within my blog posts. I am an Amazon affiliate, which means I do earn a very small percentage of anything you purchase through my links at no additional cost to you. So if you click on the link, even if you don't end up buying that particular item, I still get a small kickback from anything you add to your cart within 24 hours of clicking. You definitely don't have to, but it's a great way to help support the show if you are enjoying the content. If you've had your baby or just want to learn more about life after delivery, check out the Growing Our Family Parenting Edition. Join me next week for another episode.